Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to use this medium format camera called the Yashica-D, also known as a TLR, which stands for Twins Lens Reflex, okay? Simply because it has two lenses. This applies for most TLRs, they're very similar, so it doesn't have to be Yashica to operate the same. It might be a little different, but for the most part, this is generally how they work. First thing to kind of share the difference between the two lenses, the top one is mainly connected to your viewfinder. The bottom one is what actually affects the film, what goes onto your film. So just so you kind of know what's what, right? So to even look through, this is, your viewfinder. It's not like your typical one where camera, like your 35 millimeter or digital, where you hold it up to your eye at all. That's why we have to wear that strap around our neck, because this is a kind where you pop open the back, it flips up, and inside is the viewfinder. But you don't go like this, you have to stand. You have to hold it at arm's length, like this, and look down inside to see your image. It's a little adjusting to get used to that, because it's so different than anything else that we've done, but you move around with your body and carefully capture your image. One thing that's really nice about these TLRs is, unlike the Pentax K1000, there is a viewfinder with a grid on it, which can really help you get your rule of thirds, or just set up your composition, or most obviously be able to see if your image is crooked because of the way that you're standing. So it does take an adjustment to get used to that, but you'll find your groove, I promise. One thing is for certain about this camera is it doesn't have a light meter. You have to use that app on your phone or download it, called Light Meter, to meter your subjects so that you aren't guessing. It is not worth guessing when it comes to this camera. You only get 12 shots on your medium format film, so don't guess. Get that phone out, get that app out, and meter your subjects, okay? Alright, if you ever find that this viewfinder is really dusty, you can get a little cloth and wipe that clean. It will not affect your images, but it can be nice to just help clean things up. Maybe it's been a while, right? Alright, so on the front, I showed you where the viewfinder is, and again, you can just open it and close it when you're done using it. In the front, you'll see these silver knobs. One is used for adjusting the aperture, the other one's used for adjusting the shutter speed. So when you're looking directly in the front at the camera, it's the one on the right. The one on the right is for your aperture, the one on the left is for your shutter speed. But really, you should be looking at it from the top, because that's where the numbers are, okay? So you can see right here. I'm going to go even closer. And when I adjust my aperture, it's those black numbers, right? It's a little blurry on your end, but now I've turned it all the way to the largest aperture for a nice shallow depth of field at 3.5. If I want a deep depth of field so that everything is in focus, I'm going to go all the way up to f22, right? Or on the flip side, because I'm at f22, that means I'm not going to have a whole lot of light since it's a tiny, tiny aperture. So depending on where I'm shooting, I'm probably going to want a slower shutter speed, and whatever my phone is telling me, maybe down to f30. And I'm looking at the red numbers that's showing me the shutter speed. Maybe I go all the way down to a half second, which is 2, or a full second at 1, or B, which stands for bulb, meaning the shutter speed is going to be the length of time that I have my button on the shutter and that it's open. So in order to do that, I would push down to cock the shutter and press this button, and it's the amount of time that I have that down, that's open, and that's how long the exposure was. Okay, obviously anything under a 1/30th of a second, this should be on a table or on some kind of surface, or hooked up to a tripod. So please make sure you're not holding it. If you're going under 30, you really need to have this set up somewhere so that you don't get blur in your camera. As always, before continuing this, don't forget, you need to prioritize. What are you shooting? What's the priority? Is it a portrait? Because in portraiture, what's more of a priority? The aperture or the shutter speed? Probably the aperture, so that you get that nice shallow depth of field in the background, right? And then on the flip side, if you're capturing someone dancing or some kind of action scene, your shutter speed is the priority, because you want that movement. You want to capture it in the best kind of clear, refined way, okay? So just remember, whatever the priority is, that should be the setting that you create first. You go to that setting first. You're doing that portrait, you change your aperture so it's all the way down to 3.5 first, and then you figure out what the shutter speed needs to be. So that is something you need to be mindful of when you're using that app, because sometimes it can tell you exactly what everything should be, and sometimes it's not what it should be if you're trying to create a certain kind of image. All right, so I showed you those two settings. Those, of course, are the number 2 settings, right? So down here below, you saw me press the button to take the picture, the shutter. So there's 2 things that happen here when you're using this. So in order to take a picture, we always first have to cock the shutter, just like you do on your Pentax K1000 with the lever in the back. You push this down, you press this button, okay? And that shoots your picture. Then, afterwards, we go on this side to advance the film. Just like on your K1000, to advance the film, you have to do that. You have to push this button in and then turn it. And that will advance to the next frame, okay? So again, I'll show you. You press down on this and you turn it, okay? And one thing that I'm not really showing so well in here because, you know, it's a little tricky to capture this on camera is this little guy right here. So this right here is the film counter, and it will tell you where you're at. You'll be able to know if you are on a frame or not, or what number you're at on your roll. Sometimes these cameras don't have them, but most of the time they do. S equals start, okay, so if you were at the beginning of a roll, that's what it would say, that it's time to start. And you would advance until you have a 1 in there. And then usually it stops advancing when you get to that first frame. It won't keep going. It will say 1 and it will click and you won't be able to move it anymore. So that means you're at your first shot. At the end of the roll, when it's all done, there will be a little red circle with a dot inside, okay, at the very last frame. All right, so over here we have, that was the film advance knob and the button to press that when we need to, after taking our pictures. Over here is a focusing ring, okay? So when you're using your viewfinder and you're standing up and you are trying to create your image, you have to turn this knob right here in the front until everything looks perfectly crisp and clear, okay? So you will look through your viewfinder and really turn that until you just get that right amount of focus. All right, so now we're going to load up this Yashica-D. We go on the bottom and you'll see a red O and a black C. So that tells you which way is which. We want to turn the dial to the O so that this thing opens. And as you do it, it starts to prop open. It's really nice and easy. And you'll see there's a whole world back here. Don't get overwhelmed by it. It's not scary. It's really, really simple, okay? It's just a matter of figuring out which side's which, right? So usually, after shooting, there's going to be an empty can. After someone has already unloaded their film, there's usually always an empty one in here that we need to take and move. So we simply pull out this right here and get rid of the empty one. And then we bring it to the other side, okay? So this side, near the open door, I guess you could say, and simply lift up this piece on the bottom here and line up the notches with the top, okay? So you always have these little notches that you'll see there's a little line in the metal piece at the top here. We want to turn this so that it's going to be really easy to get this in here. I find that it's easiest when it's at the vertical orientation over the horizontal personally. So I'm going to carefully, and it's a little tricky when you're trying to do this at a good angle, but I'm carefully putting it in there, and then you want to be able to push this back in. So this feels kind of like it's really in there and it's a little too firm, like it's going to be tricky. Okay, there we go. Now it feels a little better. Sometimes it just takes a moment to wiggle it around. You should be able to push that back in, and then of course you should be able to turn it. If you can't turn it, then that's not going to work. So we need to take it out and just do it again. Okay? Super easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Sometimes it doesn't hurt to kind of blow some of the dust that's in there, or you could get a little cloth and wipe that clean, okay? You'll see inside is the beautiful shutter in there. So yeah, there's that. Okay, now the film part. When you open up this camera only takes 120 film, so you always have to make sure it says 120 on the box. With this film, you always have to be careful because when you peel off that sticker and start pulling it, if you pull too much too fast, you are exposing the whole roll. So we always want to make sure that we are having tension on this film by, you know, holding it tightly, pinching as we're doing it, not just letting it happen. It's dangerous, so don't do that, right? We want to set ourselves up for success. Okay, so my canister has been moved to that side, okay? Now I'm going to take this and carefully place it going this way. I'm going to turn my camera up the other way because I feel like it'll be easier for you to see. And I'm going to also angle this a little bit so that you can see it perfectly, okay? So all I'm doing is I'm taking my roll and I'm carefully, again, matching up the slits on the bottom to this part over here. And then I'm going to lift up this silver knob right here to allow it to go in, okay? You always have to pull it and then push it back in, and it clicks. Super easy. It's even easier than the other side. Then it comes across just like that, okay? It's really nice and easy. It goes right into the tongue of the film. And it's so hard to see on video, but there's a little slit that this goes right into. The extra piece that's kind of folded, you just kind of push it in, and then as you push it in, you start turning the knob, okay? You kind of got to let go a little bit and just go for it, and it should feel pretty good. And then it starts rolling and cruising. When this happens, your arrows happen on your film, you want to line it up with the two red triangles. You'll see there's one here and one on the other side. They're really tiny. You want to line up your arrows with the triangles, and then that means you're good to go. You close it up, turn it to the C so that it's safe and secure. Okay, so now it's time to take a picture. So we open up our viewfinder, we focus with the focus ring to make sure it's perfectly crisp. We set our settings, whatever priority setting, with our shutter speed and our aperture. And once our frame is, everything is perfect and ready to go, we go ahead and first make sure that our film is at the 1. So what you need to do is turn this film advance dial all the way until it gets to 1, okay? Sometimes it takes a hot minute, but eventually you'll see 1, okay? So now I go ahead and let's say all my settings are ready to go. I cock my shutter by pulling this down. Please note, once you do that, you can't change your settings anymore. That's it, you gotta commit. So you press your button for your shutter, and then you just took a picture. So in order to move to the next one, we press this down and we turn to get to the next photo. And you'll see, just now I went a little too far. In some cameras it automatically clicks to the next frame and it stops you. In this camera, I have to pay attention to the numbers because it started to go halfway through between the second and third frame. So just pay attention, figure out which camera you have. You'll know once you're using it, and you might have to be careful with how much you turn in advance because you could go through a whole frame and not even know it if you're waiting for some click to happen. All right, so again, I cock the shutter, I take my picture with the button, and then now I advance my film by pushing this down and turning until I now get to the 3 in there. All right? All right, there you have it. That is the Yashica-D. We're going to have so much fun with this. Cheers.